Hey everyone, I'm T-Man, and I host a podcast called Make Me a Gamer, where I sit down with a friend of mine who doesn't really play games that often, and talk to him about gaming news and other things that happen, and get his perspective from a person who is outside the gaming industry. I also occasionally write reviews and think pieces on games at my website tmanwrites.com, but enough about me. I am here to talk about one of my favorite games of all time, which is Xcom 2. For a little bit of history, the original Xcom came out in 1994 and was a PC game. It was a turn-based tactical strategy game where Xcom, which stands for Extraterrestrial Combat, took on aliens who were invading the Earth, and it was a worldwide defense of trying to keep the aliens out of the planet. And it was a huge hit. It's been on a lot of best strategy game of all time lists. And in 2012, Firaxis, who is responsible for a lot of Sid Meier games like the Civilization series, decided to reboot the series with XCOM Enemy Unknown. And that followed the same script, which was aliens are invading Earth, and XCOM becomes a worldwide defense, taking on the aliens as they invade and try to stop them from taking over. In 2016, they released XCOM 2. And it was a new take on the game and its systems because it is a direct sequel to XCOM Enemy Unknown, and it takes its start from the bad ending. Aliens won, and you are now the commander of a resistance against a worldwide force known as Advent, which is what the aliens have used to take over the world. They are now in control. Humans have just kind of like accepted it, and now aliens are roaming the Earth, and they have like worldwide control through this force known as Advent. And you are part of an underground resistance. You have your own ship, and you're basically fighting against an occupied force, which makes everything so much more interesting because you're no longer the funded worldwide group that you were in the first game. To me, I just love the strategy to the game. There are two layers to the strategy. There is the geoscape and the battlescape. Battlescape is your typical sort of tactics. In this game, because you're a resistance, most maps, start off with an infiltration sequence where you're undercover and not known to be there, which adds a whole new depth to the strategy because you can plan out your first attack and surround an enemy and just decimate a squad before they even have a chance to react to you, which gives you a leg up in terms of some of the harder enemies. But that battlescape is basically typical turn-based strategy where you move your squad around and you can move an attack, and then the enemy gets a turn once they've seen you, and it goes back and forth. The geoscape is the overall world management where you're sort of managing the day-to-day in your ship for the resistance. The geoscape is where the game is usually won and lost because you're juggling so many different objectives. You've got your research, which is trying to advance your technology so you can have better weapons, better armor. There is stuff you have to build within your ship. There is things like the Proving Ground, which lets you build the actual technology you've researched. And there are power relays so you can power your ship. And you have got to balance all these things in addition to the Avatar project, which is what Advent is working on and is basically your end of game timer. And that's on the world geoscape, and you can see the timer slowly going up. And obviously you can do things to combat it and bring it down, but it gives this sort of tension to everything you're doing because you only have a limited time. Everything you do takes time. A research project will take days. Your soldiers that get wounded in battle have to recover for 2 weeks, and you just can't use them anymore, so you've got to put less experienced soldiers in the field. It's wild strategy. I love it a lot. But for me, it's not just about the strategy of the game. The thing about XCOM 2 is that there is loads of customization you can do to your characters and your squads that you're commanding. They can be from all sorts of different countries. There's multiple different languages that you can set as their voices. They can wear all sorts of different stuff, from like bandanas to cool armor, sunglasses. You can customize how they look, their hair color, all sorts of different things. You can make your friends in the game. I've had Deadpool go out on a squad with Furiosa from Mad Max. You know, it's just anything you want to do with this squad, you can do. And it makes it so much more personal, because every single time I play this game, it's a new story. And for me, the plot of the actual game, like, you know, the Resistance versus Advent and figuring out what the aliens are up to, that's there, but that's not nearly as important as like the personal stories. For example, one time I had to send 3 soldiers on a rescue mission for a captured soldier. Everything was going smoothly, we'd infiltrated the compound, and no enemy had noticed us, and then I accidentally set off an alarm opening the cell of the captured soldier. So I had one guy carry the unconscious soldier while the other 2 sort of stayed behind to like defend and give him a chance to escape. But everything went so terribly wrong. One of the guys got mind controlled and ended up killing the other soldier and then falling unconscious, and he got captured while the other guy barely made it out with his life carrying the other soldier. He was like running as like all the other enemies were shooting at him. It was just this emergent story of my personal mission to rescue this one guy, which just went horribly wrong. I lost a soldier and another one got captured, so I'd have to go on another rescue mission later just to get him back. And it's those kind of stories that make each time playing XCOM 2 for me a new experience, because there isn't a game over after something like that happens. It's just a part of the continuing story of your squad, even if things go horribly wrong. And it's one of those things where when 2 people who have played XCOM 2 are sharing stories like, oh, my squad had to do this in battle, and you know, it's this real harrowing experience, and oh yeah, there was this time I had a 99% chance to shoot the guy and I missed and it just ruined my whole day. And it's both people getting real jazzed about their own personal stories between their missions, and it's not just like the plot of the overall game that is making them excited. It's like their personal connection to each of their soldiers. And that, to me, is why I love XCOM 2. It's not just the strategy of the game, but just how each soldier and each time you go out on a mission is just a completely new experience. There is an expansion for XCOM 2 called War of the Chosen, which adds a whole bunch of new systems to the game that make it even better. There is a bond system where 2 soldiers can get closer and it gives them more options in combat, but also if a bonded soldier's partner dies, they go berserk or they get real sad and are grief-stricken, and it's just a whole new dynamic. The Chosen themselves are harder, more interesting enemies and give like another layer of strategy, because they can show up at any time on a mission and just completely change your tactics. They also add a new kind of enemy called the Lost, which are basically zombies, but it adds a different feel to the game because they attack you in like a horde instead of like careful strategy of like picking off a couple enemies at a time. You've got like 10 of these zombies running at you, and it just changes the dynamic of the field, especially when you're fighting regular enemies and the zombies at the same time. There is also a large mod community for XCOM 2. The developers encouraged mods and made it very easy for people to add their own and for players to find new mods and change it up. So you can get new costumes, people have made new classes, people have patched out things that people don't like. So on top of like the regular experience, you can mix and match things the way you want to play the game and add new variety that wasn't there before, and it's just really cool. I think XCOM 2 is the pinnacle of the series so far. You don't really need to have played the others to get into it. I want to end by just giving like a few tips for new players, since XCOM can be a hard game. When you first play, you should do the tutorial, and if you're using War of the Chosen, you should see the Lost and Abandoned story mission and play that the first time, but once you've gotten through that, you should restart without those things. Because the tutorial hamstrings you, because normally the first mission you can have 4 upgraded soldiers if they all survive, but the tutorial mission makes it so only 1 soldier survives no matter what, and so you only get 1 upgraded soldier for your next mission, which is kind of sucky way to start the game. And Lost and Abandon always makes it so you have the hardest chosen first, while if you don't do the Lost and Abandoned story mission, it's a random selection of one of the 3, and also that mission itself is really hard, and is one of the more difficult things, but it's a really cool story mission, and so if you want to get that experience, you should at least play it once. I also recommend going into advanced options and adding longer timers, because your base game kind of has a very short window that sort of forces you to be fast in certain levels and can really screw you with how short the timer is until you're like familiar with all the mechanics of the game. So adding longer timers to the game helps a lot. And also you can double the length of the advent timer on the overall geoscape until you're used to how the game plays. So that's it. I love XCOM 2. I'm gonna just saying it again. I have bought it twice now. I have it on PS4 and on PC, and I have heavily debated getting it on Switch so I can have XCOM on the go too. And I love it. I hope me talking about it a little bit has piqued the interest of some people if you're into tactics like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics, that sort of thing. It's a different approach to it, but I think you would like that sort of thing if you like those games. Thank you all for listening to me ramble about alien defense, or I guess taking back the Earth from aliens. So thank you very much, and happy gaming.